Alright, so things are starting to take shape in regards to the torso now. In this section, what we're going to be doing is finishing off the stomach, the back, and as a bonus, Zach's going to throw in the old belly button for you.
Alright, cool. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. Once again, I'm going to hit F4 to turn on edge facing, and I'm going to switch off NURMS subdivision to make the shape a little less confusing visually. Alright, for starters, we're going to make a cut that's going to go all the way across the front of our belly. Right about here, and then to the back. Once again, we're not going to dwell on the back itself. We're going to get to that a little later in this section. We're also going to make a cut from the corner of the sternum just underneath the division in the ribs themselves. This will give us a much more dramatic division in the ribs, and we'll end it right here at this back edge. So now I'm going to get my move tool out, and these vertices that I just laid, I'll push them back in just a little bit. You'll notice when I get to the corners that I'm moving my vertices on the XY plane. Pull these guys in X, and this guy as well. So it wouldn't be a bad idea, let me tweak this guy, I'll pull this vertex in a little bit, just kind of get more of a rounded look. We're going to need to line things up with the drawing. So what I'm going to do is start off by going into a left view, and I'm going to switch on NURMS subdivision, and then I'll make my character transparent so that we only see the lines in place from NURMS, and also kind of crank down my iterations a little bit so there are fewer lines and it's a little less confusing. So things are already lining up pretty well. I can grab these vertices and pull them forward a little bit, but we're going to need some more detail to cut in this edge down here. Let me jump back to perspective and shade this guy up. With NURMS off, I'm going to make a cut that wraps around the front underside of our belly. Like so. Then I'm going to follow it up with another cut that just follows directly underneath that. Now let's go ahead and use this detail to shape out our stomach. Oh, excuse me.
Whoa,
that was
that's
great.
some
The stomach exploded. Great way to shape the stomach there. All right, so
exercises do you have to do to get a stomach like that?
You have to work out with the 12-gauge shotgun.
Exactly.
So I'm going to grab this first row of vertices we just created here and drag them forward. And we can already see how that creates a division between the gut itself and the crotch area. So I'll come in here to a side view, and let me switch NURMS back on, and we'll make our character transparent. And now we can use our view here in the left side to kind of line things up and make this behave more like what we see in the drawing. So I'm just marquee selecting, grabbing verts and pulling them around, and what I'm really paying attention to is this outline from the NURBS object itself to make sure that it lines up properly with the shape of the stomach. The base of the crotch we're not going to deal too much with right now. We can see that it's a lot more curved in the drawing than it is in our work up to this point, but that's not a big deal at this point. We'll get there. So I'll pull this up a little more. Also, our character does have a bit of a belly on him. And let me pull this back to make the lines kind of flow a little better. And we have a little bit of a problem in that if we look in I'll just kind of demonstrate in our perspective view. Our belly doesn't have much of a crease in it. Switch off edge faces. You can kind of see that the belly just kind of flows right into the main crotch area, and that's not really what we're looking for. We can combat this by coming in here with our cut tool, and we can just make a cut directly underneath the bottom of our gut. Come back in here to the front. End this here. And then we'll use the move tool to take these new vertices and kind of increase the seam, if you will, the crease, in between these two shapes. Grab both these vertices and pull them out a little bit. I'll grab this vertex here and pull it out in X to kind of round the belly out. And we can already see where this is starting to help out. Here we got a more defined line underneath the gut itself. So I'm going to take this vertex here kind of at the 3/4 view of the stomach. I'm going to pull it out in X, I'm also going to drop it a little bit in Z. Just because a stomach, people who have really big bellies, you might notice the center of their stomach is actually attached to their pectoral muscles, and fat kind of builds up on each side of it. And yes, I'm aware this creature is from another planet and may not develop exactly like humans, but we'll kind of give things that people can relate to. Kind of round his belly out a little more. This is looking pretty good. Buzz, what do you think?
I'm liking it.
Alright. So we'll go ahead and bump iterations of our NURMS up one more level to kind of smooth things out so we can really see how it's developing. I'm going to take our point here at the bottom of our sternum. I'm going to push it back in the y-axis a little bit. And all that's really going to do is just kind of help the division here between the rib area and the stomach. So that's going to pretty much do it for the gut. For now. We may come in here and tweak it a little bit later as we go on. We'll have a tweaking section kind of at the end of this VTM to clean up anything we're not really liking.
Unless it turns out flawless.
Flawless, which is always what we're shooting for, but how often do we get there?
Exactly.
Exactly. So we'll come in here to the back, and to work on the back, this is very confusing the first time you do it. So I don't want to scare anybody off, and I don't want anybody to get really worried. What I'm going to do is switch off my NURMS, and then I'm going to switch edge faces back on so it's very clear where my edges are. For now, the first thing I'm going to do is take all of these edges that I have here, and I'm going to remove them. Not that they're necessarily in the way, but they're just not exactly going in the directions we want our detail to go. So I'm going to remove this edge, click on this edge, and remove it as well. Then I'm going to take the corresponding vertices they were attached to at the seam and remove them. I'm not going to worry about the edge down here. He's fine where he is. So now I'm going to get my cut tool out. I'm going to start off by making a cut from this vertex here. Basically, this is at the middle of the uppermost rib, up into the top of the back as shown. Now I'm going to kind of relocate some of my vertices here at the back of the ribs. The look we're eventually going for is to try to make these ribs blend into the back. We don't want the ribs on the back to be very pronounced or anywhere near as pronounced as they are on the chest. And so we're going to find ways to kind of soften them up and bring them into the back area. We also want to bring out a shoulder blade so that the arm itself kind of seems a little more natural. So with my cut tool, from the next vertex down, I'm going to cut up to the center of the back and then straight back down to the next vertex to form kind of a V shape. This will eventually be our shoulder blade here in just a few minutes. The next vertex I'm going to send to kind of an upper area at the seam, and the vertex under that I'm going to bring straight across into the seam as well. Before I go any further, I am going to make a cut from this new vertex down to this corner at the base of the crotch. Now what this is going to do is give me all the detail I need to start adding in a division in the back, kind of a split in the back muscles, if you will, and then make a division in between the buttocks when we're later on building our character's butt. So from here out, I'm just going to make a couple of splits that go in toward the seam, like so. Deactivated my cut tool. This one I'm not going to take into the seam. I'm just going to end at the actual back division line that we just created. This one will go all the way in, and this last one will just kind of go down slightly. So that's going to take care of all the detail that we need to create the back. Well, aside from our cross cuts, which we'll now need. This will be all of the horizontal lines we need. I'm sorry about that. Now, from the corner of the back here, we're going to cut straight across to this vertex, and you'll notice this creates several vertices here that we can use later on to shape this out and round out our shoulder blade. We're also going to make a cross cut from this vertex here down to this point at the middle of the back, and that'll be about it. The rest of this we're going to leave to kind of flatten out. We might add another cut in here a little bit later to round out the back. Let's see how this works now. So I'm going to go ahead and get my move tool out. And in the ZX plane, or XZ, however you want to look at that, we're just going to pull these two vertices in a little bit. And now we need to make a more drastic difference here to form a shoulder blade. So we'll grab the outermost vertex and drag it back in Y, and you can see how that automatically gives us a bit of a shoulder blade look. I'm going to grab this vertex here and pull it in a little bit in X just to kind of round things out. This vertex here in the middle of the shoulder blade we can use to round out the shoulder blade area itself. Move this out a little bit, and we can see how our back is starting to take shape. I'm going to start taking some of these vertices here at the division in the spine, kind of spreading them away in the x-axis. And also I'm going to move them back in y to make this division in the back a little more apparent. Pull this guy out, then back in y. Alright, so we can see how things are kind of starting to smooth out a little bit. Let's go ahead and switch NURMS back on and see what our shape is starting to look like. I'll hit F4 to switch edge faces back off. And things are looking okay for starters. We kind of need to clean a few things up though, and let's go ahead and tweak those out while we're here. We got a vertex obviously tucked back here into the back. We may not be able to see it. Let me switch NURMS off real quick and we can actually see that he's there. The reason we can tell that he's there is with NURMS on, we notice this pinched-in area. Let's go ahead and pull him back in Y to kind of round that out. We can also take these vertices here at the corner of the ribs and tweak them a little bit by sliding them in X and Y to round things out as well. Start moving these guys a little further apart. We'll make the division in the back just a little more dramatic. Pull things out just a little further. This is a nice way to go about this because, as you can see, it gives a suggestion that the ribs themselves actually have a layer of muscle over them but are blending into the spine area. So I'll take my shoulder blade, we'll kind of pull it down a little more to give it a tad more definition. Take this outermost vertex and maybe tug it out just a little more. And one of the last things I'm going to do for the back is I'm going to switch off Show End Result. And I'm going to start grabbing these vertices here on the actual seam and sliding them forward in Y. This is going to help us a great deal later on when we start sculpting the buttocks of our character. So that should do for now. Let's switch Show End Result back on and see what we've got. Looking pretty good. I think I'm going to take this vertex here, slide it up a little further, and maybe push it into the back. Now would be a pretty good time to go ahead and see how things are lining up with our drawing as far as the back is concerned. So let's go ahead and make our character transparent, and we can see how our NURMS shape is kind of wrapping out a little too far. Once again, the easiest way to fix this is to start marquee selecting groups of vertices like so and just pulling them in. Maybe we'll pull these back out just a little bit. And it looks like I got just a little carried away, pulled my shoulder blade out a little far. We'll leave it about there. And we're actually following the curve of our back much more nicely now. So we've got our stomach in, and it's lined up with the drawing very well.
So let's see what the back looks like now over in perspective with the adjustments made.
Absolutely. Jump back here to the back, and here's what the back's kind of looking like.
Okay.
So we got some nice curvature of muscles back here. Got a nice division at the spine itself. Also a good idea, because we haven't done it in a little bit, to go ahead and check things in the front view. So let's see how the stomach's lining up. Already it's pretty good. We could take this corner here and pull it out just a little. Maybe this edge here could come out just a tad more. But other than that, I'm pleased with how this is lining up. So with all that out of the way, we've got our gut in, we've got our nice seam starting to form under the gut, and this crease, if you will, is going to become a lot more defined when we put in the hips later on, so we're not going to worry about that right now, but it is a good idea to think ahead and have that extra edge in there for when we do need it. We've got the back pretty nicely defined. I am just out of pickiness going to push this one vertex back a little bit.
Yeah, that's a little better.
Soften that up. That muscle was just getting a little bit too bulbous for me. We won't worry about the butt right now. We're going to take care of that a little later when we're working on the hip. But now I'm going to kind of give a quick bonus and show everybody how to make a little belly button for our character. So let's go ahead and zoom in. We can see from our drawing that there's a little bit of a belly button suggested. And if we go to our back view and go back to transparency, I'm going to switch off NURMS for just a moment. We can see that this edge we have right here, and I know it's kind of hard to tell the back from the front, just kind of keep track of where my mouse is as I shade this back up, falls right over where we want our belly button to be. So we'll take advantage of that. Back in the perspective view, notice I just hit F4 to switch my edge faces back on. I'm going to get my cut tool back out, and I'm just going to make a cut from just above that vertex, out to the side of it, and then down underneath it. Now I'm going to hit 4 to go to Polygon Subobject Mode, and I'll select both of these two polygons, and before I make any kind of action or anything like that, I'm going to go ahead and switch off Show End Result so we can actually see into the cross-section of our alien. This is going to become important here in just a moment, and you'll see why. I'm going to hit my Extrude button. I'm going to go to the actual options for it.
Woohoo!
And, yeah, that's great. That's an Audi right there.
Yeah.
That's a serious Audi. Wow. So we're going to take our extrusion height and crank it down to about, looks like negative 0.2 will work just fine. We'll go ahead and click OK, but before we make any other extrusions, we'll notice that when we extruded, it created these two faces in here at the seam. Now these are going to get in our way, so since we have Polygon Subobject Mode still selected, I'm just going to take both of these guys, select them, and hit the Delete key. When it asks about isolated vertices, click Yes. And so now we've got kind of a hollowed out section for a belly button.
Which is very important for the symmetrical modifier.
Absolutely. And actually, I'll leave the next ones in when we extrude back out, and I'll show everybody why that is. So we're going to select these two vertices. Also, don't hold down Shift when you're selecting more than one thing. That's a bad habit to get into, even though every other program in the world uses Shift to select multiple objects. So we'll just make sure that we have both of these faces selected. Need to undo a couple of times. Looks like I did accidentally clone those faces. No big deal. We'll just make sure we have both of them selected, like so. And now we're going to extrude them out. So we'll change our size from negative 0.2 to about positive, looks like 1.3 will work fine. So we'll just go ahead and click OK. And now if I go back and show end result again, everything looks fine. So we're like, yeah, we got a great belly button going on, but let's switch on NURMS and see what happens. Ooh, that looks a little rough. We'll notice that our belly button, actually let me shut off our cage for just a moment. Our belly button has got this really ugly little divider in it.
Right down the
yeah,
middle.
it's been cut in half. That's because we left those faces on the inside of our model. So let's switch NURMS back off. We'll deactivate Show End Result. And I'll go back to Vertex Subobject Mode. Let me switch Edge Faces back on. Actually, Polygon will work a lot better for this. We'll select these two polygons here, hit the Delete key, and say Yes to Isolated Vertices, and we'll see how that cleans things up. Now I'm going to switch off Edge Faces, reactivate Show End Result, and switch NURMS back on. And we have a much nicer looking belly button.
Very good.
We got a little bit of kind of corners showing on this. That's really not a very big deal. We can go in here to Show Vertices. And let's switch our cage back on, which I deactivated a moment ago. And we can kind of marquee select around the upper and lower parts of the belly button and just kind of tug things down a little bit. And up. So we got a cute little belly button going on with our model.
Okay.
We've taken care of the back itself, and we've got the stomach in place.
Looking really good, Zach. All right, so that's going to conclude this lesson here.
All right.